We're live. Welcome to the Acushnet Board of Selectmen. Today is Tuesday, May 1st, and we are again meeting remotely using Zoom. I'd like to thank the Acushnet Cable Committee and Chris Oliver for helping us pull this together week after week. These aren't working. Why are they in my ears? Let's put those over there. Okay, so first, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda for today's meeting along with the minutes of October 8th, 2019, which have been distributed?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Old business, COVID updates. And we've got some specific items. Any general comments, Ms. Hebert, before we get into specific items?
So I do have a general update. It just kind of came out today, but it's not official yet. It's some legislation that passed through the Senate. It's in the House now, but it gives some more guidance for towns in terms of town meeting. Obviously, initial legislation that came out enabled us to move our town meeting back, even beyond June 30th if we needed to. But I think the state representatives have seen that there are some things that just can't wait. We have, certain things that need to be done before July 1st. So the bill that's before the House now would allow select boards, in consultation with town moderators, to lower quorum requirements for open town meetings to not less than 10% of the existing quorum level. So if we were to have a town meeting, we could lower the threshold for a quorum. They're also allowing certain options for remote town meetings. So if you need to have a virtual town meeting, you could do that. Yep. And then they're also allowing people to change the location. I don't think that's a real issue for us because, the auditorium where we meet in the school is pretty large. So if we were at the point on June 22nd where, say we lowered the quorum, or even if we kept it at 75, we could still host 75 people and keep good social distances between people. But if people happen to have a smaller location and wanted to open up to a different location, they're allowing that in this bill as well. So they said that it's with the House. The final action on the bill could come as early as next week. So once I get the final word from that, I'll let you know. And it may be something we use, it may not be something we use, but at least it gives us more options for having a town meeting or pulling a town meeting with certain articles earlier if we needed to.
As time passes and everything's still shut down, I think we need to understand what our options are for having a town meeting.
Yeah.
If we can't get down together, if we can't get into one location, so let's fix that because the clock keeps ticking.
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Gasper.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You mentioned we can lower the quorum by 10%.
No, we can lower it to as low as not less than 10%. So our current quorum is 75 people. So we could have it not less than, say, 7.58 people. But so we could have a quorum of 10 people if we wanted to, is what this bill would say. Obviously, there are pros and cons, and every town is different with their quorum levels and what they're comfortable with. But at least it gives us some options if we know that, maybe we lower it to 30 or 40 people, so at least we can have a quorum and hopefully, enough people can come to have a meaningful representation. But part of that also encourages that that the select board limits the town budget, limits the warrant articles to the town budget and only acting on federal deadlines. So you can't have a controversial article on there and lower your quorum so that, you know, causes more problems. So
Yeah.
once we get the final, all the wording, I'll get it out to you guys. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that this is something that's being considered and looks like it's going to pass through.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Sorry, I'm trying to get my hearing set. Go ahead, Mr. Gasper, my apologies.
Mr. DeRoche basically asked the question that I was going to ask, but I'm still confused. We can go to, I thought it was 10% of what our current quorum would be, which would be 75. So 10% of that would be 67 and a half people, right?
It would be not less than 10% of your current level. So you couldn't have it less than, say, if 75, 10% would be 7.5. So your quorum couldn't be set at lower than 7.5 people, is what they're saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, could have a revolution.
Well, we're going to talk about budgets in the articles next week, so we'll leave that conversation for next week.
Yep.
Thank you. Moving on in the agenda with other COVID updates, this Hebert employee vacation rollover.
So we've been talking about this for a while. I've mentioned it informally to you all. Something to consider if you want to make any changes. We currently have a 1-week vacation rollover for pretty much most of the unions and town employees, where everything has kind of been adjusted with the coronavirus. People have been asking what's going on with vacations. People have a lot of vacation, certain people who may have a lot of vacation on the books, who have been working through all of this, trying not to take time off to help the town get through, all this, the difficult time of, the COVID. So anyway, I've had it questioned. Other towns are looking at it as well, whether we should make an adjustment to our vacation carryover policy or decide to leave it as it is and at least give a notice to the employees that whatever time they have to start using before they lose it at the end of the year. And I think we should consider town employees separately from police and fire EMS. They have their own contracts. They're a different beast in a sense. So this would be for any employees that are not included in the police and fire EMS contracts.
What's your recommendation?
It's up to the board. I would think it's up to the board. So what I've said is I think a 1-week carryover that you've already allowed in your contracts from years past is a generous offer. We've already allowed people to do a remote access, the remote access policy that we've implemented. It's allowed people to be safe. They've had some days in the office and some days out of the office. I think continuing that 1-week carryover is fair. If you wanted to be generous, I would say to increase it to no more than 2 weeks carryover, but you could also consider putting a deadline on that extra week. I think that what the board has already done has been generous in allowing people to kind of have that remote policy, working, a few days from home, working a few days in the office. So I don't see a huge issue with keeping what we already have on the books, allowing the 1 week that we already do, and just encouraging people to use time now as they need it.
Mr. DeRoche, Mr. Gasper, any comments?
You want to go first, Kevin, or me?
Well, I thought about this a lot, and I talked to Julie about the 1-week carryover in the ASME contract for mostly town hall employees. But the problem, gentlemen, is we can't let this pandemic keep stalling and pushing things out into the future. So I'm a little concerned about that. And when I initially looked at the schedule of some of these vacation times, I was apt to say that anybody with 2 weeks, there's still 7 weeks left in the calendar year. There's no reason why they can't use a couple of days a week or a week at a time, and say anybody with 2 weeks or less remaining, use it or lose it. And anybody with 2 weeks or more, they're allowed to carry the 1 week, but it needs to be used in the first 30 days of the new calendar year. So we're not getting too many people bundled up with a lot of vacation times next year, right? You have somebody with 3 or 4 weeks. If you let them just use it and carry over too much of it, then they're going to have 4 or 5 weeks vacation. And we don't know. The problem with this is, and we need to rid ourselves of this pandemic as much as we can. And as Ms. Hebert said, we have been good about our policies to our employees. And I'm just concerned that maybe next year, everybody's listening to all the difference of opinions on TVs, and they're saying maybe in the fall this thing returns. I don't want to be playing this game again next year, back and forth, and we don't know what's going to happen. So, I'm at the point where if you got on the 2 weeks, there's no excuse why you can't use 2 weeks from now to the end of the year, and anybody above will let them carry over 1 week. But it's got to be used in the first 30 days of the new fiscal year. Excluding public safety, well, mostly fire, right? Because there's different language in the police department contract.
Mr. Roche?
Well, I'm just absorbing what Mr. Gaspar spoke about in that moment, or his comments. 2 weeks or more, you're saying those people have to use at least 2 weeks or more. They have to use at least 1 week, and then they can keep 1 week as a rollover.
Should anybody?
Well, they've already got that. They've already got that.
That's they don't have it. It all hinges. The contracts say with approval of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator. So, they don't have it. It's on a basis by employees, and it's got specific language if it was no fault of their own or some language to do with that. And you know what? Again, we've had a lax schedule here, so I'm saying 2 weeks left, use it or lose it. Anybody with more than 2 weeks will allow the 1 week carryover, but it's got to be used in the first 30 days of the year, so it can't be dragged out and prolong this issue of vacation carryover. I'm not big on letting a lot of overtime, this week carry out to whenever.
Mr. Broche, any response? Or?
Well, I am weighing the make no adjustment policy. Just leave it the way it is, and if people use up their week, if they got a week left and they use it, fine. If they don't, they can roll it. You got 2 weeks, you got to use a week and keep a week. I am a little, I don't fully understand the policy of, is it a common thing that the town does? Usually rolls over a week for their employees, gives that week rollover. Mr. Gaspar, excuse me?
What does the contract say about?
I think Roger froze. I'll pick up. I think Roger, you just froze.
You froze. I didn't freeze.
Okay. So the contracts currently don't have a time limit. The contracts all say that you can carry over a week of vacation, like Mr. Gaspar said, for reasons on or off, work or not work related. That you couldn't take the time with the approval of the town administrator. You can carry over up to a week. It doesn't have a time limit on it, so I don't know that we would be able to put a time limit now that they would have to use it within a certain amount of time. I would say if we added an additional week, we could do that. I also think I don't want to I don't know. I would say as it stands right now, the contracts all have that 1 week. So I wouldn't want to change that or limit it where we would then have contract issues from there.
Are there I think of you. I mean, are there people that are in a position where they haven't been able to take vacation time because, where vacation time's all canceled here. So we've extended everything because we've not been able to take any time. So, but is that the case in town hall that you've got people that can't use vacation time because they need to be there all the time? And I heard of that. You're doing 2 jobs, but are there other people that haven't used their vacation time because of some circumstances?
Yeah, there are definitely circumstances or employees that are in that situation, and others that are not. So it's kind of a case by case basis.
Can we solve this on a case by case basis? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, so
I just to further to what the other two selectmen were saying, I don't object at all to letting employees roll over a week. I'm with or without a time limit. We can talk about the time limit. But we've got some extraordinary circumstances going on right now, and I think, you know, part of what's real is even if you wanted to take vacation time, there's nowhere to go. Gas is cheap to get there, but there's nowhere to go and nothing to do once you get there. So
Mhm.
vacation time is about getting away and relaxing, and if you can't do that, then you can't use it. But I mean, I don't think that's enough of an excuse. So
right.
I'm not going to allow people to use all the vacation times. But you know, I don't object necessarily to allowing people to roll over 1 week, again, with or without a time limit.
Mhm. Yeah, so I just want to clarify, because that's what we currently have in the contract. So kind of like Dave said, if you choose to make no changes, that's what will happen. People will send a memo to me. If they want to carry over a week, they'll send a memo to me to be approved. And like the other contract, especially honestly with the pandemic, I think it would be hard to say that you can't carry over the week, you know, for reasons, you know, personal or work related reasons. I think it would be an easy claim to say, well, there's plenty of reason to allow a carry forward. They weren't able to take the week. So if you want to do that, we can just leave it as is and not add any additional time. I guess I just wanted to bring it up in case you wanted to make any changes. I know people discussed adding additional time or allowing more than a week carryover, and that's why I wanted you to have a chance to vote on that.
Are there,
Roger.
I think can I just go first, Kevin, please?
Yep.
If there are people that, you think should be allowed to carry over more than a week, could you float them up to us and maybe make a recommendation as to who those people are? I think, you know, I think you're an example of that. There may be others in town hall that, you know, should, you know, you can't get away even if you wanted to. And I think we should allow more rollover time for people in those circumstances. And I'm not sure exactly what all those positions look like, but I suspect we've got a lot of employees in that situation that, you know, we're expecting them to be on the job. We want them on the job. And, you know, we shouldn't punish them. We should reward them for that, not punish them for that. Mr. Gallagher, to you.
Yeah, you guys got contracts. I just looked at I'm just going to go by the department and not the union, but it just says all vacation days and personal days that will be used by in this case, it's the director by June 30th of each year. The director may carry over up to 5 days vacation into the next year if the director was unable to utilize those days due to an on and off the job circumstances beyond the director's control with the approval of the town administrator or board of selectmen. So, you know, I'm gonna stick, you know, if we want to let the 1 week for everybody to the rollover, that's fine. But I'm by no means am I allowing 2 weeks, 3 weeks vacation to be rolled over when some of these people have 3 or 4 weeks vacation.
Nobody said that. Nobody said.
Well, you're alluding to more than 1 week
Well,
rollover.
I'm asking Ms. Hebert to make a recommendation for specific people and specific circumstances, and I'd like that presented to the full board. I mean, you know, I get that you don't like the idea, but we're in some extraordinary times, Mr. Gasper. It just seems we should be open-minded to extraordinary circumstances.
Mr. Chairman?
So I agree. Mr. DeRoche, go.
I'm okay with the 1 week rollover. I do think the point of establishing a use by date is something I'd like to see in the final vote.
For that first week or for any time?
Well, for any week. If I'm getting 4 weeks next year and now I get to roll over, so I got 5 weeks, I would just feel more comfortable if the employee had to use that, say, you know, 2-3 months or something to that effect.
I don't object. When we roll over time here, we've got to use it by March 31st.
You know, well, we're fiscal.
Typically, you got to use it by March 31st.
So, you know, if you had to use it by September 1st, you know, over the summer, I don't know who's going to object to that. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Ms. Hebert.
But
I want to caution the board, just because we already have established contracts, And so we can't deviate from what those contracts currently say, or we're going to have union or contractual issues. The current ones don't have a limit on them. So I would say if we already allow the 1 week, we don't have a time limit on it. It's with the approval of the town administrator and or the Board of Selectmen. I would say if you wanted to allow additional weeks beyond the 1 week, what I would suggest is if you wanted to do more than that, Mr. Cabral, as you said, if special circumstances, I would suggest nothing more than 2 weeks as a total carryover, and I would put a time limit on that second week, because we can't do that because that's not already established in one of the contracts. But if you are looking to put a time limit on that first week, you're not going to be able to without running into contractual issues.
I agree with that conceptually, but not across the board. I think there are going to be people that, probably had the opportunity to use their vacation time and just didn't. And I think in those circumstances, we need to stick with you get to roll over 1 week. But I think if we can make a case that there are people that have, we've expected to be on the job, we're happier that they've been on the job, and for that reason they didn't use their vacation time, then we should consider that. And not, gentlemen, not making a decision right now, but making a recommendation that we look at Ms. Hebert's recommendations for specific employees that perhaps we should do that with. So do we agree conceptually with allowing 1 week to roll over for everyone? And is that, so you're saying right now we've never had a limit on that, Ms. Hebert?
No, we've pretty much every union contract has that in there, and every individual contract has in there a rollover. And again, they all say, due to circumstances on or off the job, but I think it would be really hard to say, this is a pandemic, that's enough reason right there. I don't think anyone's going to win an argument that, they could have used the time because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Anyone could make an argument against you. So that's why I think that 1 week is already kind of established. I don't think there's any.
I don't know if that's true, though. You're saying because nobody can go anywhere that's an excuse or that's a circumstance that's out of people's control, when it's not. You can take a week's vacation, and stay home and do whatever you want to do.
So Rachel's been out since March. I've been coming to the office every single day. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I've been working every single day. So I haven't taken any vacation time. So where does that leave me?
Well, I think this matter is.
Use it or lose it.
Okay, so then I'm just going to close the office then.
We have a lot of employees, and we have many different circumstances, to go. We're trying to create a general, overall solution to the situation.
I'm comfortable supporting a 1 week rollover for everybody, and to be used anytime during next year. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's, it's either in some of the contracts, it's inferred in others. I'm comfortable with that. And I'd say, Ms. Hebert, if there are circumstances like Ms. Leonard's where you feel that we should consider rolling over more time than the week, because I agree with Ms. Leonard. It's, we need her in the office. If Rachel's not in the office, we need somebody there, and it's good that she's not taking vacation time and she's spending time in the office. So I think we should reward that behavior, not punish it. So
thank you.
My perspective would be that everyone should be entitled to roll over 1 week and make a presentation to the board for anything longer than that to be considered on a case-by-case basis by the entire board. That's my opinion. I'm not making that a pronouncement, but I think that's reasonable, gentlemen, given the circumstances we're in, that the 1 week without question should be allowed to be rolled over. And if you feel we need to put a timeline on it, I wouldn't object to December 31st. I don't think that's unreasonable to give them, to be used in the first 6 months of the year, although it sounds like we can't do that with our union contracts, but maybe we can do that with our management people. I don't feel that condition's necessary, but if that's a compromise position with anyone else's position, I go there.
If it would help, Mr. Cabral, I can get you a list of people who maybe have more than 1 week who have been unable to take time, and give you kind of like a little blurb of each of their circumstances and why they might need more than the 1 week. So at least you can see that and review it and make a determination at that point if the board so chooses.
This gentleman on that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'd like to see, have some people, because this is what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I was thinking of business as usual, you got a week, you got to take it off. And you got 2 weeks in the books, you got to take one off, whether it's every other day for for a week and a half, so you're not taking 2 weeks off from your job and we don't have anybody in a position that we need somebody.
Here's the,
There's
go.
many variables to try to decide and make a blanket decision. I think, my position is we just keep it the way it is and go from there. So that's where I feel.
so, but I just, the just putting a firm example on that though, Ms. Leonard could take the next 2 weeks off and the selectman's office is empty.
No, I completely understand that. I do, Roger.
Okay.
That is the thing. I hope Lisa wouldn't do that. We've always been open.
If we're telling her, use it or lose it, and
Well, I'm use it in a creative way. Use it, or use it, I'm trying to cover everybody. I think we might have 200 people who submit articles to us saying they deserve to have 2 weeks off next year. I don't know. There's a lot of employees and I've looked at the numbers and what people have.
Yeah, there's a lot of accrued time
And
out.
it's all over the place. I
There's a
see
lot of accrued time.
5 weeks.
Make Ms. Hebert, present if you would present circumstances of people that we should consider rolling over more than a week for. Is that?
I'm okay with that. Put it
that's
forward.
Case by case.
Right.
Mr. Gaspar, does that seem reasonable to you?
Mr. DeRoche just said that he's open to it and you're open to it. I don't have much of a choice, right?
Well, no, I'm open to consider people's, doesn't mean it's guaranteed. Everybody's on a case-by-case situation. So I will look at things on a case-by-case, but, I submit your articles and I'll vote next week on it.
Moving on, golf course. The conversation I had with Ms. Hebert earlier was we should just leave the golf course closed until the governor tells us golf courses should be opened, rather than reconsidering this all the time. We should just leave the golf course closed until the governor tells us golf courses should reopen. Reasonable or?
Mr. Gaspar or myself?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can go, Mr. DeRoche.
This is a Board of Health issue.
Well,
That's all I can say about it.
It's a state of emergency issue, and the governor's declared golf courses should be closed, I believe, Ms. Hebert, is that correct?
Yeah, so the governor has specifically said his order, which is now currently through May 18th, is closing all non-essential business. And he specifically said that golf courses are non-essential business. So just to save the selectmen time from we've had this on the agenda a few times and have voted to delay the opening for the golf course. My suggestion would be if you so choose to vote this way, just have the golf course open when the governor lifts the state of emergency on non-essential businesses being closed. And I know that Mr. DeRoche has worked with Dana, and Dana's been sending some information to me too as well, how they can safely open the golf course whenever it is lifted, to keep social distancing measures in place, and allow for a lot of the safety measures that we would be looking for. So until that time hits, I'll continue to work with Mr. DeRoche, Dana, and the Board of Health to make sure that whatever procedures we set up will be acceptable to the Board of Health and something that the golf course can keep up with. I know there have been discussions about not using the golf carts and things like that. Whatever we can practically do to keep everybody safe and have the golf course run when it's ready to open, we'll be looking at doing. So once we get all that information together, I'll be sending it off to you all as well, so you can review.
Ms. Hebert, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Gasper.
I know this pandemic's not all about money, but it's all about money, right? And it is for a lot of people in business. And I look at our golf course as a separate business, and that's what it is. I'm getting extremely concerned over governors across the United States with all these radical different policies that are going on, not open, don't open, you're going to open up partially. I guess if we're going to continue to keep that golf course closed and lose money, have we looked into that PPP program that the government's doing and seeing if there's any benefit that we could utilize from that to offset some of our losses?
I don't think that's eligible for a government entity. I don't think we're eligible for that.
I don't think so either.
Okay, because we're bleeding cash and, waiting until the 18th, I got it. But you know what? The way we've been told back in March, 2 weeks, then we're told 30 days, and I think we're on day 50 of the lockdown. What happens if this goes out another 30 days, 45 days, 50 days? That golf course, I can tell you right now, is going to lose $100,000 this year instead of making $100,000 this year. We're already way behind. So I'm becoming increasingly concerned about our golf course. That's all.
Agreed. Agreed. I was the guy that thought we should have opened 3 weeks ago, but it didn't go that way. I thought it should have been opened. I thought we could have opened it safely, and that didn't happen. So at this point, I've just resigned myself to the fact that it's closed, and I didn't want to come in here and argue the point. So, governor said, we'll keep it closed till the governor says we should open. That's become my opinion, which I thought would be what the two of you thought as well. But
well, Roger, 30 days ago when we were developed, 45 days ago, right? About 45, 50 days ago when we were doing this, it was a lot different scenario than what we're dealing with today now, right? And the can just keeps getting kicked down the road and kicked down the road. I understand that, we're looking at cases and all that stuff in the counties and in our town and everything else, but 50 days ago, we didn't have one case, and now we have 30. I think a majority of that came from our senior over on Middle Road over there. We got a big jump in cases for Acushnet. So, I don't know. I think there are ways to do things and put safety protocols in place to make sure social distancing, as they're saying. I mean, you hear experts say being outside and social distance is the best place you can be. So, that's a golf course, right? I'm just getting frustrated at all the different crap that we're hearing, and these businesses are going under. And 16 million jobs have been lost in the last 30 days. And I don't know if anybody in government really cares. They're still getting paid, but talk to those 16 million people that lost their job.
We closed some of these things when the virus was a rumor, and now we're in the middle of it. I can't. If we closed it when it was a rumor, I can't see opening it when we're at the pink. Mr. DeRoche, to you.
And Mr. Chairman, part of my conversations with course management was also how we could open early. I mean, this point hasn't been brought up yet, but I'm not going to spend my time and my effort if our decision isn't the final decision in this situation.
Agreed.
And we've had 2 occurrences now where the things we wanted and agreed upon and planned were overruled. So, we're having these conversations. Am I wasting our time? Are we, we should be talking about budgets and getting the, things moving forward. And I'm open to, speaking and getting points to open the course early. But if that's not going to, fly with the Board of Health, then, we can keep putting dates down the road. So that's why I mentioned at first it's a Board of Health issue. I'm starting to see it as that. So, we can pick next week to say we're going to open it, but, if the Board of Health doesn't agree with it, we're not opening it. And they're taking the position that they're keeping everything closed until the governor has ended the state of emergency. So we keep bringing this up, but my situation is now is, I'm just spinning my wheels. So.
So, all right, I think then that we will leave the golf course. I've got further things I could say, but we'll leave the golf
Okay.
course closed until the governor says we can open it. Bulky item pickup, any comments on how that evolved? Nothing?
It's, you want me to go, Mr. DeRoche?
Oh,
You want me?
yeah, please,
I'll
Mr.
follow
Gasper,
you
go.
this time. I'll follow you this time.
I'll go last.
It's a shame. I guess that's what I'm going to say, is because notice was duly given. And, Mr. DeRoche talked a little bit about the health department doing what they did there, right, at the last minute again, the last 2 days before the event. And they all got notices in their water bill 2 weeks prior to that. So why it was a last minute decision, I don't know that. Do I think it was a good decision? And, with that and the recycling closure, I guess my point is I think recycling should be opened up, right? And I think that the Board of Selectmen, if given the opportunity, us three gentlemen could have sat down and come up with a plan and said, you know what? We're going to reopen recycling. We're going to allow 6 or 8 cars in at a time because they got so many feet down there that they can do this and put cones and or stakes in the ground where everybody's got their own spot. Again, being outside, socially distanced. It's all the things that they're recommending that you do, but yet we're still not opening up that part of the economy to allow people to go while they're caged up in their rat cages, and they can't even go down to the town garage and get rid of stuff. So the heavy item pickup was the same thing. It's the DPW crew. They're not interacting with any of the residents. The crap's being left out on the side. I consider that essential services because if I'm willing to put an item out front for somebody to pick up, it's trash to me, right? So, I guess, I'm aggravated at the whole thing as well as I believe Mr. DeRoche and Mr. Cabral, you are too. But, at some point, I think that we need to have that dialogue and say, hey, you know what? It is what it is, but, ultimately we are the town fathers and we should be making decisions when it comes to our employees. And I think that sometimes, emotions got in front of a lot of people here. And, it's a shame because I think it's embarrassing that we can't have our recycle center open. We can go back and forth about the bulky item pickup, but, and I'm not going to try to be the scientist that say it can only sit there for so many days or whatever, and the effect, the pandemic's gone, the virus has gone off the surface. But as far as our recycling goes, in my opinion, it's unacceptable.
Mr. DeRoche.
Well, I do understand the Board of Health concern. This is a pandemic. There is a state of emergency. Governor, town of Acushnet declared the state of emergency. We have employees' health and well-being to be taken care of. I guess my frustration, a little bit, is that there should be a better lines of communication between us right now. And we go to work for something that will help the citizens as well as protect them. And, if there's misunderstandings or that sort of thing, so be it, but we got to work through this. Now's not the time, so if we're going to take a course that says we're closing until the state of emergency is ended, well, then that's it. We're not going to keep discussing it and going this way and that way. And I understand the frustration of people who want to throw their brush at the recycling center, and the frustration of the people at the golf course who want to go golfing. And it is costing us money. I agree with that, but once again, we're coming back around to, the Board of Health has made it clear that, there's a state of emergency and then there's health issues to be concerned with all these decisions. So, we all know where we stood on the recycling, on the brush aspect of the recycling. We all knew where we stood on the big item pickup. It's, so if the gap is between communications between us, then we need to work on that. The Board of Selectmen right now, I think, we should be working through this whole situation. That's it. So
I guess, with regard to the last issue, with regard to the bulky item pickup, I guess I would say my biggest disappointment was the way it played out, that there was ample notice that bulky item pickup was going to happen. last Saturday. It was widely publicized within the town. And, you know, the Board of Health, the Department of Public Works was well aware of the date. And if there was any objection, it should have been communicated, you know, by Mr. Menard, who runs the Department of Public Works, to the Board of Selectmen. That never happened, and that's disappointing. You know, I will say that as a resident, and I'm a selectman and a resident, that I took actions at my home in terms of pulling things out to put out, and now they're in places that I don't want them, in anticipation, and I can't put them back in anticipation of bulky item pickup. And it's just disappointing to 3 days before the event to find out that it's canceled when it's an event that was on the calendar for a long period of time. And I will go further to say that, you know, with regard to both, you know, whether it was the right decision to make or the wrong decision to make, with regard to both the recycling center and the cancellation of bulky item pickup, there's a clear conflict of interest between the Board of Health and the Department of Public Works. And that conflict of interest absolutely was part of what drove that decision. And that, I think, more than anything, that's what's disturbing to me, that it was not an arm's length decision that was made. It was made with a clear conflict of interest. And that'll be my last comment on it. And I'm trying to figure out whether it's appropriate to do something about that or not, but that was clearly there. Moving on, anybody else on bulky item pickup or anything with regard to COVID?
Mr. Cabral, can I just want to express to the people, I want to apologize to the people that this took place at the last minute. And I also want to apologize to Kathy Silva, our manager in the DPW office, because she put a lot of work into scheduling this event. And it's basically, you know, kick sand in my eyes. Thank you very much, but no thank you. So I want to apologize to Kathy Silva publicly, because I know how much work she put into this with scheduling things with CMAS in the water bill company that was passing out the flyers, and the argument she got in with them when they went out early without the flyer. And, you know, I hate to see somebody go through that much work and, you know, it go to waste. So
she went above and beyond to make sure the citizens were aware we were having it. She thought we were having it.
I understand, and that's why I'm apologizing publicly to Ms. Silva, because she deserves an apology from someone. So I guess that apology is going to come from me.
Mr. DeRoche, you had something else?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify also that people received the reverse 911 and it mentioned the date of June 6th, but that is not where it was postponed to. The bulky item pickup has pretty much been postponed indefinitely, and it might not happen until October area because of the way scheduling was. May was the month that it had to happen, and now that's been, you know, been thrown out, and so it might not happen. So just for the residents, don't think on July 5th or June 5th you start putting things out, because they're going to get picked up, or whatever the Saturday after that is, or that sort of thing. So that's,
I don't even know where that date came from. I mean, that's an arbitrary date.
I don't either.
I mean, the governor, here we are again, talking about the same thing over and over and over. The governor comes out and now pushes things to May 18th. So, I mean, we just jumped to June 6th? I mean, it's beyond me, and we'll figure it out in the future, gentlemen, on how we're going to take control of what we're doing when it comes to DPW issues. But that's for a later discussion.
Thank you. Item 2 under old business is the fiscal 21 budget discussion and the articles. I want to hold that discussion. Sent out a communication earlier proposing to hold that discussion until next Tuesday. A meeting that we had not scheduled, but schedule that meeting for next Tuesday at 5 o'clock with the sole item on the agenda to be the budget. I will hold us to that. The sole item on the agenda is going to be the budget. We're not going to allow anything else on the agenda. I mean it. I mean it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you got something else for that agenda, Mr. Gasper?
I do. We're holding the articles and the budget.
Yeah, both till next Tuesday, yes.
Okay, can we just have one other discussion, and that would be this vacation policy?
oh yes, we do have to resolve that. That's correct.
Okay, okay, see, it's slipping already. Yes, fine.
It's something that we can't wait any
Let's get
longer,
it done.
Roger,
No,
because
agreed. Let's get it done.
time is passing by.
Let's get it done. Agreed. Let's get
Thank
that on as
you.
well, Ms. Hebert.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Kearsarge PPA agreement, I think we voted to approve it last week, subject to making sure we had the final version of the contract. I think we do. I reviewed the changes that were made by our attorney. And I've signed a version. I've signed the contract. I've sent it to Ms. Hebert, but I asked her not to release it until tonight, just to make sure you two didn't have anything else. I think we'd approved it.
Yeah,
Allowing some time to review it one last time, but absent that, I think we've got a deal, correct?
that's, it's fine on my end.
The only thing I was looking for was town council seal of approval, and Ms.
We got
Hebert
it.
assured us that town council's put the seal of approval on it because they accepted, Kearsarge accepted the changes in the language that town council preferred to have in there, and we're moving forward. Is that correct, Ms. Hebert?
Yes, that's correct.
We're good, Roger.
Town accountants update. Ms. Hebert, Mr. Gaspar?
Ms. Hebert, you want me to roll with this?
Yeah, go for it.
So, gentlemen, last meeting, or the meeting before, whenever we discussed the town accountant, Ms. Hebert and I were going to interview two of the candidates. We said we had four, one being an internal candidate, and one that was looking maybe to help out like an interim thing, but the board didn't have that. So we tried to get in contact with the other two candidates. Due to COVID-19, the candidates decided that they weren't interested. One of them wanted to stay at home because they were able to stay at home with their child and continue to do their job, just uncomfortable making a move with COVID-19. The other, the gentleman pretty much said the same thing. I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm not comfortable with making a move. So Ms. Hebert and I did not have the opportunity to interview those two candidates. So I think Ms. Hebert and I have had a long enough discussion about this, and to provide, maybe if the board's willing to provide Melissa Forg, our assistant town accountant, with an opportunity to move into that position if the board so chooses. And maybe if we are, I would ask Ms. Hebert to put a contract together for the board's review. And make sure that everything's acceptable. And, maybe if we want to do it in an executive session on the contract strategy, we can. If the board's happy with the contract and Ms. Forg is happy with the contract, I don't think there's any reason for discussion in executive session, gentlemen, and we could just make a motion to approve it if that's where the board wants to go in that direction.
Mr. Burrow?
I agree. We should offer her the job contingent on a contract, successful contract.
And I'm agree also. The conversation I've had with Ms. Hebert, I think we acknowledge that she doesn't have entirely the full resume that we would have hoped for. And I know Ms. Hebert believes she's very qualified and will learn on the job. And you certainly respect you and respect your recommendations. So entirely comfortable with putting her in that position, acknowledging I think it needs to be on a trial basis. I think she needs to prove that she can handle the job. She's not an experienced town accountant. It's a big job. It's an important job for the community, and absolutely endorse her, absolutely support her. I think she's got to prove she can handle the job. So that would be my only reservation. And
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Mr. Casper.
Normally, when we do these kind of positions for department heads, we always have a 6-month probationary period. So, I think your concerns are very well taken. I believe Ms. Hebert and I, we've had that discussion. And I know in the past with the town treasurer's position, we've had some verbiage in there that they have to retain certification after so many years. So I'll work with Ms. Hebert to make sure that we get that language in there, and there's a 6-month probationary period in there. But I did have an opportunity to speak with Melissa about this opportunity, and and over the last several months, honestly, Mr. Chairman, I've been talking to her and working with her on different things. She's a hard worker. She's dedicated to us in the town of Acushnet. I think she's demonstrated that in the past. She's been interim town accountant for some time now.
Yeah, for 6 months, right? Yeah.
You know, look, I'm probably the toughest one to convince, right? And after having a lot of conversations with Miss Hebert and Miss Fogg, I feel very comfortable with this move, pending a successful contract negotiation, right?
Why don't we get a motion to offer Mel the town accountant position, subject to satisfactory negotiation of a contract?
So moved.
Motion to that effect, Mr. Gasper, motion, Mr. DeRoche?
I'll second.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we'll review a contract as soon as you have it available. Thank you. I'm going to just jump ahead in the agenda a little bit. I see our town clerks hanging out, and I know this is fascinating for you, but we'll jump in now. If you want to hang out, you're certainly welcome to. But I know what you've got is going to be brief. So why don't we bring you in now? And if you want to hang around, you're certainly welcome to. But okay, there you are. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Labonte, welcome.
Thank you. I'm here this evening to discuss what my last meeting was about, moving the town election. With moving the town election, as you all know, we have all uncontested races. We also are going to be offering early voting for mailing only. So we will not have an early voting on-site location as we've done previously. It will be treated very similar to absentee ballots, that they apply for it, and then once we receive their application back and verify that they're qualified to vote in the election, we then send them out the absentee ballot, which is then processed on election day. So very much the same design, with one exception, that you don't need any reason to vote early, whereas you do with absentee voting. But the main reason that I'm here is to ask the board if they would consider moving the election times. Currently, we are scheduled for an 8 to 6 election. I've already had a number of election employees, that have told me they will not work in June because of COVID-19. So that is really going to put me and the crew in a very difficult position. And it's very important that, even though we have an uncontested election, that all of our numbers and the job that we do is that of only the best. So my recommendation, and this is after speaking with town clerks and seeing a number of other surveys that have gone out, people have altered their election hours. My recommendation would be to move the election from 8 to 6 to either a 9 to 3 or a 10 to 4. I feel that I'd be able to effectively cover those, unless, of course, there are, changes again with the direction that we had due to COVID-19. So I guess
Preference for the hours, what were the two options again, Ms. Labonte?
9 to 3 or 10 to 4.
Any preference?
I'm sorry, 10 to 2, 10 to 2.
9 to 3 or 10 to 2? I mean, they're all uncontested races, so.
Right, exactly. And I think we're really pushing the early voting. Anyone that wants to vote, it doesn't get any more convenient than that. We deliver the ballot directly to the individual's home. They can pull up the applications either from our website on the town clerk's webpage. There's the 2020 early voting application, along with the 2020 absentee voting application. So all they have to do is fill that out, get that to me, either put it in the payment drop box outside of town hall, or they can mail it in. We then mail it off to them it doesn't really get much easier than that. But for those people that enjoy going to the polls on election day, they also will have that opportunity.
Enjoy?
I'm sorry?
Enjoy people that like doing that?
Yeah. There are some people that really do enjoy going and
Okay.
that process. But I don't want to limit anyone's ability to vote. And I don't feel personally that I would be doing that if we were to shorten the hours.
Do you have a recommendation as to what you'd like the hours to be? The 9 to 3 or 10 to 2? What do you prefer?
I would prefer the 10 to 2 because I think it would be easier to have staff. And that's really my main.
And all uncontested races as well. I think that makes it less of an issue in my opinion.
Right.
Gentlemen, could we get a motion to endorse the town clerk's recommendation for 10 to 2 voting hours on election day?
So moved.
I'll second.
Further
Thank you.
discussion? All in favor?
The only thing I'll say is, and Ms. Labonte, I've had this conversation with Ms. Labonte. I mean, again, going back to the no COVID-19 pandemic in town, when there's no contested races, your average day is 300, and that's open up for all those hours that Ms. Labonte normally opens up to. So, I think 10 to 2 is sufficient for anybody to go that wants to go cast their vote. Again, it's on a Saturday, right, Ms. Labonte?
That is correct.
So it's on a Saturday. 10 to 2 is fine. They go out. They can do it if they want to do it. I wouldn't even think they're going to come close to 300 people that are going to vote. Seeing how without COVID-19, that's what you get. So, if 100 people come out, 150, you'd be lucky. So, without putting any restraints on Ms. Labonte and her staff, get them in, get them out, and have a nice day. The election's over.
All in
Thank you.
favor?
Thank you very much for bringing up that point about the number.
I think we voted. I did.
Okay.
Gentlemen, yes. Okay.
Yep.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Have
Bye,
a good
Pam.
night. Bye-bye.
All right, jumping back, the Comcast permit. Ms. Hebert, you want to lead us through this discussion? You distributed a couple of documents, which I have reviewed. Why don't you lead us through the process if you could, please?
So for Comcast, this is something that's been kind of lingering since the
Years.
November, December, yeah. And a lot of this is really just following technicalities between the ascertainment hearing and what we'll be doing going forward with approving a permit for Comcast. So what you have in front of you that I sent out, our town council, who's working on this with me, he provided the document. It's the ascertainment report, which is essentially the minutes of the meeting that we had back in, I think, beginning of December. And so that ascertainment hearing is important because it basically justifies to Comcast that we have a need for the money. We have projects that we have in mind that we would need the money for, and to prove that the money is worth something. We're not just going to let it pile up and do nothing with it. We have needs that we see in the future using it for. So I gave the report to you. Hopefully you all had a chance to look through it. Again, it's basically just the meeting minutes.
Who wrote this? Who wrote this? Feels like
yeah, so the attorney worked on it, but the Comcast sends a stenographer, so he was able to obtain the yeah.
All right, fine.
Yeah, so he has play-by-play copy of the stenographer's minutes and basically combined it all and condensed it.
Makes us look like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, so the Board of Selectmen, he said the Board of Selectmen should vote to accept this report, to adopt the findings contained in the report, and then thereafter you'll have to vote to authorize me to work with Town Council to negotiate the terms of the final renewal license. We've already started working on that. It kind of started before I got here. That's what Mr. Gasper referenced before, the giant book. It's a lot of verbiage.
Standard.
Yeah,
A lot
it's
of
extensive.
standard. Yeah.
But yeah, so most of it is standard. I've already talked to Town Council too and gone through. He went through all of it for basically the boilerplate language and kicked out the pieces that would be more personalized to the town of Acushnet. So that's what the Board of Selectmen would be looking to do now, to take that next step. And then once we're able to negotiate the terms, and again, I'll send all that, the thick file back out to you so you can look through it. But there's not as much, again, it's kind of a technicality. Everything is pretty much already set out. There's not much to actually negotiate. So it shouldn't be too complicated, but it is part of the process that we have to go through. So again, to start, the selectmen, if you're willing to accept, if everyone had a chance to look it over and feels comfortable, you'd have to vote to accept the report that I attached, adopt the findings contained therein, and then vote to authorize me to work with town council to negotiate the terms of the final renewal license.
Gentlemen, could I get a motion to accept the ascertainment report, to adopt the findings contained in the report, and to authorize Ms. Hebert working with council to negotiate the terms of final renewal license?
So moved.
Casper?
Yeah, second. The only question I would have is, has the Cable Advisory Committee looked at this and reviewed this and anything like that? Because, I mean, I've read through it, and I don't know, there's percentages in here, and there's talking about positions that are going to need to be done, and I know that the funding needs to come from the Board of Selectmen, but is everybody okay with, like, the Cable Advisory Committee? Is they in agreement with this? I don't know.
So I haven't given this report to the Cable Advisory Committee. They haven't had a meeting since then, and I know it's been hard with COVID to organize a meeting, but this is essentially taken like the meeting minutes. So these are all things that we did discuss during the hearing. And again, what's important, and to get to your concern, it's not put in stone. Whatever we discussed is not something that's put in stone, that we will get a person to do X, Y, and Z, or a certain piece of equipment. These are things that you discuss in the ascertainment hearing as options and things that you would like to see in the future, but it doesn't mandate that it's going to happen. So ultimately,
they should see the report. They should see it. I mean, it is the minutes of their meeting, but
yeah.
get that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with what Ms. Hebert just said. I mean, I read through it, Roger, but the problem is we're not the committee members. Mr. DeRoche and I believe you are on the committee, and
I missed this meeting. I couldn't attend.
they talked about percentages and how things would be splitting up, and I kind of did some math, so it kind of looks like certain things. And they talked about media groups, and then having somebody facilitate the town side, the school side. I just don't want to. I don't know. I just don't want it to be shuffling around too much and saying we don't know. But if that's all this really is saying that we all agree that this is what the town's looking to do, and we can discuss this in the future, how we move forward and expend those dollars, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the case. Anything that would be expended from cable in actuality has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So ultimately, yeah, this is kind of a discussion, and people were throwing out ideas. But ultimately, the selectmen will get to determine how the money is spent once we get it.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, if we already didn't do that.
We did, I think. So I think we're all in favor.
Ms. LeBon, you're still TV?
I just figured that out.
There you go.
Dangerous. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And let's.
Ms. Hebert, can we just get that to at least so that they can review it, the cable guys? Wherever you went on my screen.
You see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I will. I'll send that out to them.
Thank you.
Let's get this contract done. Back to the agenda.
We're good though, right, Roger? I mean, Julie's can work with this. I noticed that we didn't use town council. We use a different lawyer.
It's an attorney that specializes in this type of contract. This is what he does. So
we're good, right? Ms. Hebert, the vote we made, we're good to get you to the next stage, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
DEP letter regarding PJ Keating. Was that available when we met last week? I don't recall. Did we discuss that last week?
It came, I want to say it came out on Thursday.
So we haven't seen it. All right.
So at our meeting last week, we didn't have it. It came out afterward. And I think it's been shared on our social, through the social media.
Yep.
But we wanted to at least put it on the agenda so that you could discuss it and just at least mention it to
It's dated the 28th. I don't remember when we don't remember when I got it. It's,
yeah.
basically the Department of Environmental Protection, just to summarize the letter, and I'm not sure how the discussions between the DEP and PJ Keating came about, or who initiated them, or whether PJ Keating approached them as part of the process of moving the asphalt plant. But, you know, basically, the DEP saying, PJ Keating, you cut a lot of corners, you didn't, you're not in compliance with the law, you didn't do the testing you should have done. Some of the information that you supplied is outdated and not current. This is more than a relocation of an existing facility because you're adding new equipment to the plant. And as a result of, you know, you're not in compliance with the law for a project like that, for a relocation like that. And for these reasons, until you get us comfortable with what you're doing, until you provide us with more detail on the environmental impacts associated with the move of the asphalt plant, that plant cannot operate. So,
Can I,
not entirely surprised by the letter, very honestly.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Ms. Gaspar.
So, Ms. Hebert, the last time we were discussing that, you know, the soil board permit with conditions and things of that nature, I think I asked the question, and I had concerns, one of the two, about if we approve the soil board permit, does that mean that we approve the asphalt plant being moved to its new location? Because that was a major concern of mine. Did we get an answer from council on that? I think we were up in the air on whether it did or it didn't. I feel that it is. And if we approve a soil board permit, because the asphalt plant is part of the quarry under the soil board permit, I know that the land use is regulating the fuel storage tanks, but there's ways around those fuel storage tanks. So, you know, I just want to let the board know that I think that's an answer that we need to have before I put further conditions on the soil board permit.
Well, I'll jump in on that. We had a conference call last week with town council. Chief Gallagher was on the call. Ms. Hebert was on the call. I was on the call talking about things like the soil board permit and the license and the DEP letter. You know, we've asked to be kept in the loop with regard to the process through the DEP. We've asked to, you know, have the DEP communicate with the town of Acushnet on a regular basis. We're, you know, obviously very interested in that project and how it progresses. So I know town council reached out to the DEP and asked us to, you know, make sure they communicate with us. The conversation was around the soil permit. I mean, the asphalt plant is moved. If the asphalt plant, and we talked about the asphalt plant. If the asphalt plant is in compliance with zoning and environmental regulations, the asphalt plant is going to move to the front of the property. We can approve the soil permit, and we can approve the land use license, and we can put whatever conditions we want to put within the scope of the law on those two documents. But I, assuming that plant complies with all environmental rules and regulations, I don't believe we have the ability to stop the plant from moving to the front of the property. Again, assuming they're in compliance with the law. And, you know, that's the discussion we had, was more around, you know, we believe we have the authority to deny the land use license if we want to. And we talked about whether we had sufficient cause to deny the land use license. And it's the opinion of town council that we do. That, you know, based on what we heard from the community at the public hearing, that, and this is not a public hearing on the land use license, but, you know, we've certainly, and we've done that. We did this in open session before. We can approve it, we can deny it, or we can approve it with conditions. And based on what we know and what we understand, we could certainly deny it at this point. The discussions have been more around what conditions we put on the soil board permit and the land use license that allows PJ Keating to continue to operate as a good neighbor. And I shared with town council some ideas I had for conditions that should be attached to the soil board license and to the land use license, and he's reviewing those proposed terms and conditions. I can review them with the board if you'd like, but I guess it might make sense to wait for town council to come back to me to tell me whether or not what I'm suggesting is appropriate and legal before I comment here.
Can Julie send that to the board so we can see what your comments were? So, you were engaged in that conversation and we weren't?
Sure, yeah.
Well, I just don't want to be, I don't want to be duplicating things that other selectmen are saying. I know.
No, that's fine. That's fine. They can be.
We're trying to do what the right thing for our residents once and for all, right? And I think there's a lot of different things that need to be discussed. And, I'm still blown away. I understand that town council said that we can, approve it with conditions, disapprove it for these reasons, and things of that nature. It just from the start, it's been very ugly. And, hey, I moved the plant now. It seems to me like, hey, I moved the plant and now we don't have an option to tell them, no, that's not good enough. We don't like that where it's located, right? So I'm trying to figure that out. Other than that, we're spinning our wheels and,
I think the conversation that I've had with Ms. Hebert and with town council is, that we need to be in a position where, even though DEP has said to PJ Keating, you cannot run that asphalt plant, I think we need to be in a position as a town where we don't just sit and wait for the DEP to approve the plant, and then we've not made any forward progress on the land use license or on the soil board permit, which is part of the reason we had the conversation last week with town council, that we're looking for some advice on how to move those two documents forward and what conditions we can put on the land use license and the soil board permit. I mean, very, very honestly, one of my big ones is talking about hours of operation. And, that plant is a 24/7, and now that the asphalt, our town bylaw gives us the authority to regulate hours of operation, and so far our regulation has been, okay, you can operate 24/7. With the asphalt plant at the front of the property, I think we need to evaluate whether or not that's appropriate for that facility, given what we've heard from the neighbors. So that's one of the topics I'd like to explore. Certainly, we need to put conditions on them that are legal, but I sent 6, 7, 8 different points over to town council. I copied Ms. Hebert on them, and she can certainly share them with the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman. Okay, really?
No, I was just saying, I just forwarded the email to the other two so that you would have it.
Okay.
Thank you. Has there been any discussion on the timeline that the DEP anticipates their approval process to take? Like, I know all these, I've read the letter many times, and it seems like they have to establish standards for noise and air quality before they even, get to the next step. So is this going to take a month, 2 months, 3 months, considering our state of affairs?
I don't know that we know that. Ms. Hebert, do you know?
No, I don't know. I can ask and find out if they have a general timeline. But I think a lot of it is also up to PJ Keating and how quickly they get the information to the DEP as well.
Right. I mean, they're
But
not
I
going to
think
open it next
generally-
week. I mean, it isn't anticipated that they're going to open next week. Hey, we have complied with all the regulations and now we're ready to go. I mean, we should.
I think it's bigger than that, is my instinct.
That was what I was assuming. Yes. Yes.
Some of the, it's environmental impact stuff. One of the comments I'd made, and I don't know if I made it here or not, but I was at a meeting a year and a half ago with the DEP, with PJ Keating, with other representatives from the town, and PJ Keating was talking about the fact that they were doing some sound modeling around the location of the asphalt plant near the front of the property. And I remember the engineer saying, we're not, this modeling may, we may not be able to put the plant there depending on the results of that modeling. And I guess I just sort of expected that, somebody would share the results of that testing with us. We're obviously interested in it. And I'm not, you know, apparently they didn't do it, or apparently they didn't do it to DEP standards, or I'm confused about what happened, but I would have expected that, you know, being good neighbors, knowing we're concerned, they would have come into us and said, you know, hey, Acushnet Board of Selectmen, here's the testing we've done with regard to, you know, with regard to sound in that location. And, you know, these are the results. And we never saw any of that. So that's just continues the disappointment. So I think what we need to do as a board is we need to, you know, we need to advance the land use license and the soil board permit and figure out what conditions we want to put on those documents. And I'm waiting for town council to come back, you know, with what I've sent them, and there'll certainly be other opportunities to add additional conditions. But, you know, I think if there are things you're thinking about, we need to communicate them through Ms. Hebert to town council, please.
Okay.
And you've got my list, so that can be a baseline for, or food for thought for you know, where you want to go. But
Well, it helps by knowing somebody, your baselines, what you and the chief and Ms. Hebert and town council have discussed, because, Mr. Chairman, if you've got 2 or 3 things that I'm already reviewing, I can just check them off the list and move on, and I don't have to be studying those 2 or 3 different issues ever again, right?
correct.
They've already been taken care of. You've already gone through that process. So I think it's saving Mr. DeRoche and myself a lot of time by looking at what you guys have compiled, kicking that off the list of things that we may have concerns over, and looking at a smaller list versus the, you know, maybe the 6 or 7 or 8 things we may have on a list already, right?
So the goal is, the bigger goal is we want to advance the land use license and the soil permit and figure out, you know,
Right.
if we're approving them, what conditions we're approving them under. So we need to, I want to make that determination pretty quickly, and, you know, pushing town council to help us in that regard.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that takes care of both 6 and 7. Moving on to new business, we've got non-union personnel agreements, and Ms. Hebert, I'm assuming that these are the agreements we've had in the past for all of these positions with the, and these are agreements we've had year after year with the increase at the agreed cost of living. Is that fair to say?
That is correct.
I thought these were going away with the wage and classification study, that we didn't have a need to do these anymore.
So that's the ideal goal. But part of the wage and classification, part of the process that we kind of got cut off on is creating a personnel bylaw. So the wage and class gives you the step and grade for each person, so their salary is known in that sense. And again, it's adjusted by whatever COLA is approved by the selectmen. So the pay rate is pretty set. But things like vacation, sick time, you know, longevity, those are things that I think it's still important to have this document so it outlines specifically for each person. But if we are to take that next step that we kind of got cut off on and adopt a personnel bylaw, all of that information would be in there. And anyone who is covered under, who is not covered under a contract, union or personnel contract, would be covered under the personnel bylaw, and it would list out things like how, you know, after so many years you get so much vacation time. Essentially, it would be like a union contract for all non-union people. So because we haven't taken that final step and adopted a personnel bylaw, we still need to have these 1-page, 2-page documents.
I mean, we've got one manager. There seems to be a standard for vacation time, and we've got one manager with a 7 less days. So I don't know how that came to be. It seems there should be a standard for something like that.
I think, which one are you talking about?
I
Majority of them-
think Mr. Menard has less vacation time than.
So I know that majority of the people follow the clerical union contract in terms of vacation time, but I think Mr. Menard would have been following the DPW contract. So that's why his vacation length is that one.
Okay.
That is correct. If you read Mr. Menard's contract, he follows the DPW contract, not the AS contract. It's stated right in his contract.
Okay. It just, I'm just, you know, looking at department heads and calling them all the same because they're department heads, it just seems to me there should be a standard for a department head. This is how many weeks vacation you get, rather than, you know, you're in the DPW bucket, you're in the fire department bucket, you're in the town hall bucket. That we should, you know, as managers, we should be consistent with a policy for vacation time. I mean, I know I had a document at one point that summarized all the department heads and what their benefits were in terms of vacation time and personal days and all of that, but I just if nobody's complaining, fine, but it just feels like it should be more standardized across the department heads.
It'd be Roger, but I think when Mr. Noble came here, we kind of got broken a little bit when we started bringing in staff. Julie, as an example, you know, she's here to defend herself, but sometimes when you're making arrangements with a contract negotiations, it's not always about salary. You give somebody an extra week versus, you know, instead of starting them with 2 weeks, you might give them 3 weeks because you're taking down the salary a little bit in the get-go. You know, you'd rather give a week's vacation than give somebody an extra $5,000 or $10,000. And that employee might say, I'll take the extra week vacation versus the $5,000 or $10,000. So it works out. It's beneficial to the taxpayer. So I think a couple of them got a little off track. If you look at trying to look at them all universally and looking at the ASME contracts, no, they don't make sense, but it's in the agreement. There's a reason why it was in that way. It's, you know, it's beneficial. On the most circumstances, it was there for a benefit to the taxpayers and the costs associated with it.
If I can, I mean,
Mr. DeRoche,
No, I'm
That
all
was
set.
Ms. Hebert.
any
sorry,
other comments on the wage agreements? Julie, I'm sorry, Ms. Haber.
just that, yeah, I believe Brian was working on the personnel bylaw. I remember seeing a binder, so
I
I
spent a
think,
lot of time reading it. I know it's out there somewhere.
yeah, so I think ultimately I agree with you, Roger, that there should be some standardization and that, you know, whenever we're able to pick up from where Brian left off and complete that, I think it will be helpful to do what you're asking, you know, standardize everything, and then we won't need to do these contracts every year.
And any comments on the wage agreements, that we have out? Are we good with them as they are? Motion to
Fine with them.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Do you second, Mr. Gaspar?
Yeah, second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. How do we sign these, Ms. Hebert? Do we sign these? What do we do?
I mean, you've authorized Dave to be your signatory, so if you want him to sign on behalf of the board,
Oh, yeah.
I would say do that, but then, you know, ultimately someday when we're able to get back on track, if you all want to put your signature on it.
Lisa's going to have a pile waiting for us, isn't it? I can picture that table when we get back, huh?
Yeah.
Roger, I think it's, you know, when you guys, I missed that first Zoom meeting, right? When you guys did that, you voted for Mr. DeRoche to vote the warrants to save some time. I had a discussion with Ms. Hebert. I think that unless there was opposition to somebody's contract, as I've done in the past, and not sign somebody's contract because I was opposing it, here it's, I guess, unanimous, if I could say that. Were you in agreement, Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Cabral?
I'm in agreement. Yeah, I'm in. Yep.
So I guess if it's unanimous, I mean, we should all really sign the contracts. I mean, we're doing what everybody else is doing, and I hate to see us do this. Is we just got to keep in mind 6 feet apart, our social distance, and we can still come in and sign contracts, and you know,
Bring your own pen.
and bring, you know, whatever. Right, bring your own pen and do your thing and sign your own contracts. I mean, we're not in kindergarten. I think we're all adults. We can figure this out.
I can print the
With that.
signature pages and scan them over, and we could also have multiple signature pages at the end of every contract. That works too.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I do agree, though, that for a personnel contract, it's better to have
Everyone's signature on it. 'Cause
all the selectmen signing it. I think that's better.
5 years down the road.
Yeah,
people
however it happens, whether you sign one and scan it or you get over there and put your signature on the page that we, do you have a color printer over there?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, I will get a signed version to you.
Roger,
Yes, Mr. Gaspar.
you asked her if she had a color printer. She gave us all the vacation time and budgets are in color.
Yeah, but that's scanned. That's not copies. Well, just yours is a copy. Theirs is scanned.
Oh, because I know in the attachment, she gave us the vacation schedule and she referenced the yellow, orange,
Yeah, oh, yeah, it is all in color. All right.
red. So just saying,
We've got a reserve fund transfer, assessor GIS software. What's my new business tab? I don't know what I'm doing.
yeah, it's in the amount of $1,000, I believe. Vote to approve. Yes.
Second,
I'll second it. Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we know what that is, right? Town
Yep.
Administrators report, Ms. Hebert.
Okay, let me see here. I got a few things. Trying to cover all of the good news that we've had over the last few weeks. So I've received some emails, and I know some of the stuff is also on social media, but oh wait, are we on DPW? Sorry, I'm just looking. We had a
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped it. It was highlighted, so I skipped it. I'm sorry. Why don't you start with that? It was highlighted, that's why I skipped it. I don't know, it's too visible.
So Dan had reached out. He had an expense that he wanted to have the Board of Selectmen approve. He was looking to pave the recycling center. He had said the area where everyone goes in for the swap shop and to dump all items is dirt. It becomes very muddy and the residents complain all the time. He feels it would be a great time to get this done as the center is closed. The cost would be between $8,000 and $10,000 for the mix, and the DPW can do the work themselves. He said the money would come out of the article that we had for.
Sorry, I missed the cost. My audio cut out. What's the?
It's between $8,000 and $10,000 for the mix, and the DPW would do the work themselves, so there would be no labor costs. The money would come out of the article that we have for the paving.
Materials?
Yeah.
Roger.
Mr. Gasper.
When we had that budget discussion with Mr. Menard, I was a little bit caught off guard. We, meaning me and you, and I don't think Mr. DeRoche was on the board yet. Maybe he was, but we approved the $250,000 for additional road paving. And we were told at that meeting when we had Mr. Menard in here that it was he's gone through, I don't know, like $125,000, $150,000 already of that money, and none of it's gone to road paving. I'm concerned about that. Yeah, $250,000 getting spent on things that we don't know. I know he's asking us right now for $8,000 or $10,000. You know, I think he's gone through a lot of money without the board knowing where that money's gone, and it's because of the way the article was worded. It doesn't specifically say only road paving. So, you know, I think we need to, kind of figure out what we're doing. I mean, we're losing roads. We're not doing crack sealing. I think that's a discussion the board needs to have about not allowing any more spending out of that article and figure out what we're going to do with the remaining $90,000-$100,000.
Can you give us an accounting, Ms. Hebert, of where the money's been spent to date? I know you can. Of course you can.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a report that'll show all the vendor expenses that have come out. I believe there's about $100,000 left in the article right now.
Yeah.
Something that just give us something that shows where the money's gone to date. I think that would be helpful to see. I think we approved it, agreed, assuming it was for road repairs, and there's a lot of it that needs to be done.
All right.
I'm silent. I'm getting a message on my screen. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Raj.
So I'm getting things on my screen here. I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, why don't, if we could, let's get a report showing where the money's gone. To the point of paving the yard, what are your thoughts on whether or not that's something we should do?
He's got a lot of process. You know, the grindings from the roads that we do. I don't know how much of that we have left down there, but it's almost acts as paving, right? I don't know if we need an asphalt apron. I think that's what he's looking to do, is an apron outside of the swap shed. I don't know if that's a good use of funds at this point, the 10 grand to do that. I think he can use asphalt grindings. It packs down really, really hard. It's not like dirt. I actually had that conversation with Mr. Menard while I was out at that swap shed 2 months ago. And I said, why don't we just do a giant area all in front of here, move the dumpsters down for the paper and the plastic and the metals, and make a nice apron over here so that, we can avoid that muddiness, right? And he said, I could probably do that. And now we're being asked for 10 grand to asphalt it. I don't know. I look at $10,000 saying there's a lot of potholes, a lot of cracks in our roads that, need to be maintained. And I'd be reluctant to approve $10,000 for something in the town garage yard when we have other materials he could use and pack in there and get rid of the mud problem. And we need to repair the actual public ways that our residents are driving on all the time.
Mr. Broche, any comments?
No, I agree with your comments as presented.
Okay.
I haven't seen the site. I don't know how big of an area,
I haven't either.
but the financial side of it needs to be considered. If there's a less expensive way to solve the situation, then of course I'm going to be for that.
Ms.
There
Hebert,
is, Mr. DeRoche, because I actually did it in my yard. I have a concrete driveway. I had some little trim, 4 feet all the way around the driveway. I was tired of cutting the lawn and trimming the lawn. I said, you know what? I want my driveway to be bigger, give me more room because of the amount of cars I have. And I put that asphalt grinding down about 4 inches thick, and it is pretty much, it sinks in little areas, but they're the DPW. They can continue to screen that
Fill it
stuff
in,
in,
man.
back it down, and be done.
Ms. Hebert, why don't we bring Mr. Menard in 2 weeks? I don't want anything on the agenda for next week, but let's bring him in, see if he can make a case as to why this is the best solution for him, and we'll table this at this point, move it to a future agenda if there's no objection to that plan.
Okay.
A town administrator's report.
All right, here we go. So this is just some good news, I think. And I'm hoping I got everything because I've gotten a lot of emails. And again, there's been a lot posted to our social media, but I wanted to kind of cover some things that I thought are worth sharing with everybody. The first that I have on there is police commendations. So our police chief sent me an email wanting to make the board aware of 2 recent cases that his officers did an outstanding job on. The first one, he says, I want to call your attention to an outstanding example of investigative teamwork within the department. The following summary is purposely vague. I'm not going to read the summary, but he outlined an incident that evolved over 3 days and included Officer Ryan Lavoie, Officer Adam Hebert, Dispatcher Samantha Gomes, Officer Kevin Walsh, Detective Sergeant Keith Ashley, and Detective Jeremy Fonts. And he said, I would like to recognize the above mentioned personnel involved in investigating this case. Information was collected and properly documented at different times by each officer involved. This allowed the next officer to seamlessly build upon what the previous officer has discovered. While it seemed likely early on that the incident did not occur in Acushnet, the investigation continued nonetheless, based on the seriousness of the victim's injuries. It would have been easy to let this case flounder or remain on file with very little to go on initially. The continuity, resolve, and tenacity displayed in this investigation is indicative of the high quality of the department's personnel. Because of that, a very dangerous individual is off the street. And so then the second incident, and I think people may have seen this article. There was an article from South Coast Today, 2 charged in by-state fraud at banks, including one in Acushnet. And so he wanted to call the attention to the selectmen to the great example of a long-term investigation spearheaded by Detective Sergeant Keith Ashley and Detective Jeremy Fonts. Again, I'm going to kind of skip over it so people can look up the article. It's a great article. But he said, there really is no how-to guide on investigating and managing such a large and wide-reaching case. Sergeant Ashley and Detective Fonts were able to build this case using their tenacity, dedication, and attention to detail. As they worked off their strengths, they also recognized the need for some added specialized expertise. They did not hesitate to reach out to some of the many contacts in law enforcement both have established over their careers. Their performance tremendously bolstered the Acushnet Police Department's working relationships with a number of agencies. The benefits of those partnerships will surely serve the town well in future investigations. Based on the above, I hereby formally commend Detective Sergeant Keith Ashley and Detective Jeremy Fonts for the work in the case. So, sorry for being vague on some of the details to spare the time, but I wanted to read this. Again, great work by our police department on.
Can you put those up on the website under the police department, perhaps, for people who
Yeah.
want to see them?
Absolutely.
Very good.
The next thing that I have, COA, the produce pickup. This was last week, Thursday, April 30th. The Council on Aging, they worked with the school and the fire EMS department to put out free produce for Acushnet seniors. They had 100 bags of produce, and they also had donations of hand sanitizer from fire EMS department. And according to the Council on Aging director, it was all picked up within 15 minutes. They cleared out 100 bags of produce. So she posted on her social media account, thank you to obviously the Council on Aging. Thank you to the school, to the fire EMS department, to Alice Rebello of Vibra Hospital, to Eric Chu from the EMA, and Duncan Murray. And she also said that they're currently working to secure funding to allow them to distribute produce to 125 residents every week from mid-May until July. So she'll know more about it in the next week. They're looking to get a grant to be able to do that. So she'll keep us in the loop, and hopefully that comes through and they're able to do more for the seniors. So great work.
Very good.
The hand sanitizer donations. Again, this is from our social media page, and we talked about this before. Former Acushnet Selectman David Warner, he made arrangements to get donations. We got 2 barrels donated of hand sanitizer. 1 barrel was donated to Fairhaven's first responders, and we kept the other barrel in town. With enough set aside for our first responders, we decided to get the sanitizer into the hands of the senior citizens. So if you read, it's on Acushnet Fire and EMS. They shared it to the social media, but they worked with a lot of different groups to get the sanitizer out to everyone. The Acushnet DPW donated a hand pump to draw the liquid from the barrel. Evan White of White Brothers Dairy made arrangements with Hood Milk for 110 brand new 1-gallon containers. Our own fire lieutenant, Brian Monty, connected us to Mr. Ed Andler of Boston-based Andler Packaging Group, who provided over 300 8-ounce bottles with caps. And finally, the Acushnet Council on Aging distributed these hand sanitizers with fresh produce to the town seniors on Thursday, and the Acushnet Housing Authority will deliver bottles to their 60 residents before the end of the week. That was last week. As additional donations of this important product are received, we're in a position to quickly get it out of the fire station and into the hands of the people who need it most. And he wrote, all of the above was donated. Great work by all Acushnet residents. It was great. He wrote 55 gallons to 1 gallon to 8 ounces. So that was a great work done by everybody in that part to donate hand sanitizer where needed.
Great, thank you. And thank you again to Mr. Warner.
That's great.
Roger.
Mr. Gaspar.
I just want to send out my congratulations to our police officers that Ms. Hebert just referenced. I mean, it was truly commendable what our officers, how they stepped up to the plate, how they handled themselves in such a professional manner. You know, I think that our police force is really stepping up under the new leadership of Chief Richmond, and you know, I was extremely pleased to be able to read those articles and see what our police force is, and especially to Mr. Jeremy Fonts, working in the detective's office along with Mr. Help me out, Julie. Oh man, Mr. Keith, I'm sorry, Mr. Ashley, Officer Ashley, Sergeant Ashley. Be able to work with that other caliber of law enforcement really goes to a testament of where our police officers are in it, and it shows that all that hard work and training that those officers have been through, it's surely paid off. So I just want to reach out to them and say thank you very much for all that hard work and bringing those cases to an end. I mean, it's truly commendable what those officers did, and Mr. Lavoy as well for his case that he handled with the domestic violence was truly commendable, working along with other officers and never missing a beat. I think that says a lot. I'm very pleased with the outcomes of both of those cases. I think our residents should be too. I know that the board is. I surely am. And, you know, I also want to reach out to, I don't think that EMA gets a lot of recognition I know they do times of storms and things of that nature, mostly blizzards and shelters and things of that nature. But I know that over the last few weeks, I've been driving around town because I'm tired of looking at my four walls and caged up like so. I do get in my car and take a ride around and check things out. And the EMA has just been incredible. It's pretty much every other day they're out delivering me. So, I just want to reach out to the EMA, all the volunteers that are over there, and say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for everything you're doing for those residents in need too. It's commendable. People come together and work as a team. It really is. And it makes me very proud to see it.
Thank you, Mr. Gasper. Also, just acknowledge the chief too. I think, a good leader acknowledges, when their employees, when the people they lead are doing a good job. And I think it was took some effort to write those letters, but I think it's important that you recognize the people that you lead and you help them understand that, they're doing a good job and you recognize them for doing a good job. So,
yeah. Thank you for adding that to Mr. Gasper. It's hard because there's so much stuff that gets spread around, and I don't want to miss thanking anyone. And EMA has absolutely done a fantastic job. So thank you for adding that in there. I have one other thing.
I think it's important because, we're not always talking about gratifying things, right? So when we have that opportunity, we need to seek that opportunity. And as Mr. Cabral just alluded to, good leaders do that, right? And I think that this is all about is recognizing everybody's effort when they actually do step and do, it's important that. And, I know it feels good. And I think that we all know that it feels good once in a while, pat on the back and say the boy, right? Or the girl, either one.
Ms. Hebert, anything else? You had one more.
Maybe I should have done this first. This is the bad news, I guess. Well,
I thought we did that at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, this came in after the agenda was posted, so it's at the end of my list, and I probably should have done it first. I shared this with all of you. It's the audit we had for recycling that was done in March.
No.
So, we got the results back and they weren't good. So unfortunately, right now our agreement allows a 10% tolerance for contamination, and our average was 18.2%.
Oh no.
So based on that, we are getting charged for the additional percentage of contamination. From DPW, Kathy Silva, she said the cost to the town right now is going to be about $1,850 each month going forward for that contamination. We'll be working with DPW. I talked to Kathy already, and we're working to get pamphlets, whatever information we can to people at home, because even for myself, I find it confusing sometimes. What can I recycle? What can't I recycle? So we're looking to get some, I think Mr. DeRoche mentioned this before when I talked to him, get a list of the do's. Forget about the don'ts, because it seems like there's so many that you could just fill up pages, but get a list of these are the things that you can recycle. These are the only things that you should be putting in your recycling container. And so we'll be working on getting information out to people so that they can do a better job of keeping that contamination level down. They'll be doing another audit in another 6 to 9 months. So we have some time to get that information out to people, and hopefully people can do a better job of keeping their recycling in order. And then if the audit comes back and it's cleared up, then hopefully we'll get that charge removed and we'll be able to save some money. But just to let people know, it will cost money to the town. It can be expensive, so please do your best to keep your recycling in line with what's actually able to be recycled.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Gasper.
So I'm going to give you some good news, Ms. Hebert. I have a property in the city of New Bedford, and I got my water bill in and sewer bill in, and they actually have a flyer. It's a beautiful color flyer. It shows you pictures of everything with arrows of what can go in, and I intend on sharing that with Ms. Silva from my DP office, because I thought that was something that was very important. And I know Mr. DeRoche has been slamming the grocery store bags, plastic bags of that nature, and people just don't get it. So I think this is a beautiful picture display. Obviously, we'll have to alter the document from to be the town of Acushnet. Everything in the middle will look good. It shows you little pictures of like the detergent bottle and the water bottle and things of that nature that can go in and things that can't go in. So I'll share that with Miss Silver. She could share that with the board, Mr. DeRoche and Mr. Cabral and yourself, Miss Heber. But I think it sends the right message. And, I guess and I hate to say this, but I guess at a certain point when people are still doing what we've been asking for so many times, I mean, I guess there'll be a time where maybe the DPW, we do an inspection like the girls did. They look for a couple of days and inspected while we were supposed to be audited and checking barrels, and maybe that, the board might come up with a fine for doing it and putting unacceptable recyclables, recycle barrel. If there's enough people doing it, we might have to move to that, because we can't afford to pay $20, $30, $40, $50,000, whatever the amount's going to be every year extra over, maybe a couple of handfuls of bad apples, or maybe there's more than that. Maybe there's a couple of hundred, but we have several thousand residents. So I think that's something that we need to address. And I did save the flyer so I could show to the Ms.
I
Silva.
think we do need to do something. So if you could share that, that would be great.
I will absolutely. Can I have a couple of things written down, Mr. Cabral. I'm sorry, but under the Golf Pros contract, is the name correct, Ms. Leonard? Because I don't remember that name being that name. The Golf Pro?
It was Manise, right? Manise?
Isaac Manise.
Is it? I thought it was Isaac Gasper.
No, Manise.
What happened to Isaac Gasper?
I don't remember.
I've known about it.
I know there was a gentleman down there with his last name is me, and that's no relationship, by the way. So everybody at home doesn't stop saying that my uncle or something's working at the golf course. But I was just shocked that his last name was my last name, and his name was Isaac.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Maybe somebody else.
not for a long time.
Anything else, Mr. Gaspar?
Been doing
I
some-
do have one other thing, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize. While we were briefly talking about budgets, I know Ms. Hebert did a great job with a lot of these cuts because of the state revenue projections cuts and things of that nature. I would ask you and Ms. Hebert just to take a look at the police department's budget prior to next week's discussion and have a conversation with the chief, because he's got the academy and cuts and all that stuff cut out of there, and I don't know if that's going to conflict with your contract negotiations. So you have some specific language that's done in a contract that says certain terms will be met. I'm worried when I looked at the cuts. I'm worried about those cuts is what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Any selectmen announcements? Anything else to come before us?
Throw the plastic bags in the trash.
Yes, in the trash, not in
Save us
recycling.
10 grand. That's it. It's easy
All
enough.
right, our next meeting will be Tuesday, May 12th, Tuesday, May 12th, 5 p.m. It'll be a single issue meeting with 2 issues on the agenda.
Well,
2? I'm seeing 3. What 3? 2.
Articles, budget.
Yeah, articles and budget. Yeah, that's one. That's one.
Okay. All right.
All
we'll
right,
do
that's
that.
one.
There we
And,
go.
yeah. All right, and the vacation issue. So, Ms. Hebert, well, we talked about this already. I'm not going to do it again. So, anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
I'll second.
Mr. DeRoche,
Second.
we are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you. See you next week.